the Around the NFL podcast. Keep the turkey away from Marc Sessler.
You better. From the Chris Wessling podcast studio, it's Around the NFL. I'm Dan Hanzus with the aforementioned Marc Sessler and Gregg Rosenthal. Heroes both. So am I. Self-love is okay.
It's important.
And there's no lack of that on this show.
And, this week, week 12, right?
Mm-hmm.
Week 11 last week, I labeled a nasty little thing. This week, to me, this Sunday is the inverse of that. And let me explain. This Sunday, a schedule that wasn't especially juicy, to put it kindly. Not a lot of high-profile matchups on the schedule. And yet, NFL Sunday woke up, rolled out of bed, and when it got to the press box, took a deep breath, smiled, took a photo, and then posted on Twitter, my office for the day.
Which a phrase that we banned about a half a decade ago on the show, by the way.
But. Optimistic about life, reflective on the journey and how lucky football is to be football.
And then the football was good, because that's just like a cliched moment, which almost feels like punching it in. These teams are punching it in.
Just to be clear,
that shows the difference between you and I, Greg. What you think of that message when people post it? I see that as when a beat writer or whoever puts my office for the day. It's a feeling of, wow, I'm at the Super Bowl and this is where I get to work. This is a cool job.
There are times when it has more
a lot of cynicism on this side. No,
we literally banned it on the show.
I mean, it's more like mailing it in as a tweet, just like as Twitter performance. So if
in terms of an original tweet, you mean? Yeah. Okay. I mean, I feel like the sentiment
we're way off track
is authentic.
Here. You're right. It was a good Sunday of games, and then it wasn't just because the Jets were
dead. We banned the phrase from the show, so it's a lawless move on your part. But secondly, in case the listeners are wondering, because that last week's episode also had, was it suck the sadness or smell the sadness?
No, you swallow the sadness.
Swallow the sadness. I mean, that was just because I want people need to know, just because the Jets had a turnaround performance today, that's not why the optimism in the My Office for the Day business comes up. That was a separate part of the show's title a week ago.
No, people that know that the old Zeuser is a beacon of integrity understand that I know what happened in our league this week and last week. It's a greater viewpoint. Like, my fandom does not extend just to the Jets. I'm loyal to football.
That was my point about you.
That's where I'm at now. As the weeks go on, I'm just like Greg, I feel like. Just loyal to the game.
I'm loyal to football.
I don't know what you're suggesting that I don't know. The undertone is that the two of you enjoy the sport and I'm just floating along here?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's not accurate, but just a narrative. 681.
We have so much to get to today.
It's absurd.
So let us start with the game. Let's start here. This is good. The game that everyone expected to be good. The game that featured two teams that make sense as Super Bowl contenders in the AFC, squaring off Cincinnati at Tennessee, and it did go down to the final minutes.
Joe catches the shotgun snap, fakes the P-line, floats it toward the end zone, and Higgins, he's got it! Touchdown! Bengals, as he used his height and his size and went up and over the cornerback in coverage for the touchdown.
Great throw by Burrow, better catch by Higgins.
There you go. There's the call from Jeff Joniak and Tom Thayer, WBBM. The Bengals, man, they can beat you in different ways, and the Titans know it. The physical Titans feeling good about themselves, but the Bengals seem to have their number. Joe Burrow threw a 27-yard touchdown pass to T. Higgins with less than 14 minutes to play, and it held up in a 20-16 win by the defending conference champions over the Titans, the team that was the number one seed last January. The Titans got knocked out by the Bengals on their miracle run to the Super Bowl. So here we are now, two teams feeling good, and it was in this game, Marc, the Bengals that are feeling better, because as the season goes on, they continue to get stronger and show you they can win in different ways, even when they're missing key players.
Yeah, it was what you would call classic sort of white knuckle operation between both teams, and I think they kind of can look at each other and see a lot of similarities in who they are. The Bengals came in with a plan to just sell out, I think, and stop Derrick Henry and not allow Derrick Henry to have one of those games. And that playoff game from a year ago, Henry was not himself. He is right now, and he was allowed 38 yards at 2.2 yards per carry. And the Bengals on the flip side, after allowing 9 sacks in that playoff game, won today. I thought both of their lines showed up and did their part. And for me, what I've watched with the Bengals over the last couple weeks, because it's not just T. Higgins, who had 114 yards off 7 catches and that touchdown, which was a huge part of this game and a momentum turner. Guys like Samaje Perine, with Joe Mixon out with a concussion, stepped up again 2 weeks in a row. Trevion Williams, another of their running backs, had a huge play in this game. Our dude Trenton Irwin, the long-haired, blonde, long-haired crocodile hunter, who was actually a childhood actor they discussed during the game, left his childhood commercial acting career because he was benched for a football game for showing up late after rehearsal. Well, where did it get him? It got him here. He made a gigantic 16-yard catch in this game.
From the audition rooms, that charisma of the child actor, he took it to the football field. You see it. He lives it and he breathes it.
You do see it. And it's these guys that are stepping up until you get Jamar Chase back probably next week. I think it came close to appearing today. You will get Joe Mixon back. And this game came down to, and we can talk to Gravedigger about this, the Titans ran out of timeouts. It was just inside the 2-minute warning. The Bengals were driving. They had it forced into a field goal that would have given the Titans a chance, at least some time to go back, drive for a touchdown. Again, no timeouts. Kevin Strong gets nailed on the field goal try by nailing the defenseless long snapper. Bang, game over.
He gets nailed by nailing.
Game over.
It was. They got the stop. They had to use up all 3 timeouts. They would have been down 7 points with, let's see, how much time to play when that happened. I think they were in pretty good shape.
It was a minute 57 left.
So they had a shot, and it was the right call. Because the snapper, if you don't know the rule, the snapper on the field goal attempt, because his head's down, it's tucked, and he's snapping, until he lifts his head up, he's defenseless, which means you can't hit him. I know the contention on the Tennessee side was that his head was up by the time contact was made, but that's not what the officials saw. And so it was kind of I got to say, anticlimactic end to what seemed like it was going to be a great ending.
That was my point, because, I mean, both teams, I think, were struggling to, especially the Titans, on endless third and longs for the Titans, trying to break free. You don't have Henry. Tannehill made a couple big throws in this, but it wasn't them at their best on offense. And you kind of thought that, you know what, every one of these NFL games, if you're going to give a team 1 minute and 50-something seconds to come down and do something, it's just going to happen this season. And then suddenly, bang, the game was over. And like 18 seconds later, and it's like, whoa, that could have gone on for another 28 minutes in another universe.
You were loving it. That's perfect.
Well, I just thought it was very definitive. It was just very definitive.
He was glowing. He was talking about, wow, that game could have gone for 20 more minutes.
That is not, you know what? I don't understand where we're coming from this. I thought it was just a massive juxtaposition.
You're right. It is crazy.
Bang, thing over.
Did you want the game to potentially continue there?
I have jumped on the Titans bandwagon, so I'm not rooting for the game to end on a penalty.
No,
oh, that's right. They're 0-1 now. Gravedigger pointed out with you on the bandwagon.
Justin, jump in here.
You don't control everything if you're on a bandwagon. But
do you cast Marc from the bandwagon after that, or how do things work here?
No, there may be people jumping off after this performance, but if Marc wants to stay on, nobody will throw him off against his will.
I am staying on. This didn't shake my confidence at all. This is just another week in the NFL.
Along those lines, I'm waiting to hear back, and I'm going to keep you updated in real time as I look through my inbox. I reached out to our research department because my 2 early games that I drafted ended in 247 and 248, and I want to know where that stacks up. Now, that's a crazy thing to be asking the research department to look up on a busy NFL Sunday, the fastest games this year, and maybe they laughed it off and threw it in the recycle bin, the trash bin. But I'll keep you updated, Marc, because I know you especially. That matters. I would like to think if it maybe got put to the back of the pile, but they don't just put it in the circular file for you. It's a request coming from a journalist inside the building. Our journal, capital J.
The Bengals bandwagon should be filling up here. Winning these games without Jamar Chase, with the offensive performances that they've had, and then to win a game like this, which is a little more nasty in the Titans style of game, I think is going to have them really fired up. Samaje Perine had a good quote afterwards to our Mike Giardi, saying that that's all we've heard is that you have to match their physicality. Well, you have to be ready for their physicality. Well, they got to match our physicality. We're a different team than we were a year ago. I'm not sure if I'm ready to go there yet, but this is how you build into being a different team. To win a game like this is very impressive to me, and I got to put my eyes on it. You can tell me what you thought, Gravedigger, of how Joe Burrow looked. But I don't think anyone played football any better than Joe Burrow did a week ago. Some of the throws he made in that Pittsburgh game were just crazy. He's played as well in the last 2 weeks coming into this game as any quarterback in football. And if you got Joe Burrow peaking and when you got Jamar Chase coming back, that's a lot to deal with.
Yeah, Burrow looked great. I mean, he was very accurate with the ball down these like long sideline throws that were put where only the receiver could go up and make a play, or put in the zone hole between the safety and the dropping cornerback. A few of those throws to T. Higgins, and obviously the sideline play to Irwin was a beautiful throw as well. Like literally either Irwin catches that or nobody catches that. And he was also really decisive in getting the ball out of his hands quick. They were using that quick passing game like an extension of the running game today. And it's one of the reasons that the Titans only had 1 sack, is that Burrow was getting the ball out of his hand. He wasn't holding there, standing in the pocket and holding it, except for a couple of times. And the couple of times he did that, he made something happen with his legs, and he picked up first downs with his legs when the defense had their backs turned. So all in all, he played a great game. They were 0-2,
and now they're 7-4. So that's a nice
same with
recovery.
the Titans. Titans are, you could
I
say
thought
that
the
about both
Titans
teams.
missed
that's
Danico Autry today, too.
I agree with that.
There just was no real pass rush.
There wasn't any
Burrow.
pass rush. Next Gen Stats, I think, put out that Burrow had the cleanest pocket he's had all season today.
Wow.
And the Titans also couldn't stop Samaje Perine in the running game. I mean, they would hit him 2 or 3 yards after the line of scrimmage, and he would push the pile for 5 or 6 yards frequently.
Wow, sounds like a great game by that Cincinnati offensive line on both ends then, in the run game and in the pass protection.
They won in the trenches, and they were the more physical team. I think that's why they won. But I think the deciding moment in this game was about 6 minutes to go. The Titans had the ball 4th and 5 inside the 20, and they elected to kick a field goal down 20-13 to make it 20-16, which doesn't really make that much sense to me unless you are really confident your defense is going to get you the ball back right away.
That's what defensive coaches do. They just imagine this scenario that they're going to get the stops. But
I mean, Vrabel was very frustrated in this game, too, and I think that...
Well, that's the thing. They didn't get the stop. Cincinnati got the ball back with like 6 minutes left and possessed it for the rest of the game.
Wow.
Greg, do we have any shift on your end with some of your snark towards Cincinnati head coach Zach Taylor, who seems to have this team playing very well on multiple levels?
They're in good position. They're frustrating to watch. I mean, I'm still saying like he's wearing a polo, but it's like a fancy polo. It's
you think they're frustrating to watch, the Bengals?
Offensively, like the way they
You're a big
create
man,
their
Greg, to say that.
Scheme, I would say,
it's a fancier polo.
Yeah, now it's like you're getting one at the mall, some sort of designer. It's like, why? What is the difference between this polo and one that's $200 less? I'm not sure, but it costs a lot. So you're not
expensive. Making any sense right now. We'll give Zach Taylor the final word on this. We wouldn't trade our quarterback for anybody on the planet, and so we're glad to have him. I might agree.
I think if you're Cincinnati, he's perfect for you.
Let's move on now to a great game and another potentially great quarterback who it felt like had a moment on Sunday.
Trevor, he drops, he looks, fires left side of both. Caught! Zay Jones catches it! The 2-point conversion is good! Jacksonville is taking the lead!
What a throw again by Trevor Lawrence. I mean, an absolute bullet to Zay Jones.
Ooh-wee, Frank Frangie, Jeff Lageman, WOKV. You feel like you haven't heard those names a lot. Because the Jaguars have barely won in years on this podcast. But now it feels like that's going to change because Trevor Lawrence is finding himself. The young quarterback connected with Marvin Jones for a 10-yard touchdown pass with 14 seconds to play, then hit Zay Jones, as you just heard, on that 2-point conversion. Doug Peterson, you got guts, my friend. And the Jaguars held on to beat the Ravens 28-27 after Justin Tucker. The Ravens have no time. 16 seconds or so after the 2-point conversion. They do get the ball near midfield, and then Tucker attempts a field goal, and we'll get to that a little later because I'd like to hear the call from Jacksonville on that as well. But that falls short. The kick would have been a record. And, yes, the Jaguars escape with an unbelievable win, Greg. And like I said, it feels like – and we know Trevor Lawrence has been playing better and better the last couple of weeks. But this is makes me think that he might be ready for a liftoff, put it that way.
This was his moment. This was his I'm not messing around moment. So many great throws in this comeback. The first one that comes to mind to me is 4th and 8. They're down 19-10 mid-third quarter. So once again, the Ravens blow a 2-score lead. Once again, it's in the fourth quarter. It's 4th and 8. Peterson goes for it. You sort of had to there. And he throws an absolute dime hole shot to Zay Jones, where it's ahead of the cornerback ahead of the safety and behind the cornerback. It needed touch. It needed arm strength. Sometimes you think arm strength is all about how hard you can throw it, but it's opposite hash, and he just put it right on him. They end up winning on that, scoring a touchdown on that drive. Lamar's up for the challenge, scores a touchdown right back, and then that final touchdown drive the Jaguars had, not only did he make a lot of great throws, but he showed a lot of awareness. They played hurry up at the very end, setting up that Marvin Jones touchdown at the 10-yard line. You thought they were going to spike it there, or that maybe they would they didn't have any timeouts at that point. You thought they'd spike it, maybe you throw it out of bounds, but they play hurry up. They had it all set up. The Ravens weren't quite ready for it. He puts it in the perfect spot,
throw.
And Marvin Jones makes an even better catch.
Underrated wide receiver since he came into the league, Marvin Jones.
Yeah,
for sure.
Especially making those types of plays. If you just watch today's game, you would think that Zay Jones is one of the best players in the league. The connection between him and Lawrence today, Zay Jones finishes with 11 for 145, and so many of them were beautiful timing routes. He just hasn't missed throws in 3 weeks, Trevor Lawrence. My big thing with him was, is he aiming it and throwing the ball where he aims it? And it's like that hadn't been the case for a while, and he's been like lights out for 3 straight games. It was really impressive.
Well, their characterization early on was like they had chances to win in the fourth quarter, and they were like 0 for 6 on those chances. These final 3 scoring drives for the Jaguars, Lawrence 15 for 19 for 173 yards with 2 touchdowns, converted 3 third down throws and 2 fourth downs. And we've been asking all along, where's the signature win? Not demanding it, just saying that would be the thing that makes us think differently about Lawrence. And previous to this, he notched PFF's number 3 and number 2 top scoring grade over his previous 2 games. Today, he hit his highest next-gen stat passing grade of the season. It's happening. It's good coaching. He's making the throws. He has had great chemistry with Kirk, and now you throw Zay Jones in there. It's an interesting team to watch.
He's playing very clean. Like, he's not making any big mental errors. And then now that you're mixing in the great throws, too, there's a lot to be excited about.
And now I'm going to give it to the Ravens defense. And not just because they cost us, Mark. The Locke brothers, so sturdy throughout the years. This is just a little, ATN lock it up trivia. This is the 3rd time. The Ravens have blown 4 games in grisly fashion this year. I've locked them 3 of those games. And they have no idea how to close out a game. And as much as we want to talk about their defense having the ability to win games along with their running game, they have let down in a lot of these games. And I just want to go through that last possession for Jacksonville. That was outrageous how bad the defense from Baltimore was, how many plays they gave up. They weren't protecting the sidelines. They would just get wide receivers wide open all over the field. The Jacksonville Jaguars had a 3rd and 21 after a sack from Baltimore at their own 14-yard line with 1:51 left in this game and no timeouts. And from that point on, they gave up a 10-yard reception to make it 4th and 5. Trevor Lawrence, first down. Then they go Trevor Lawrence, 17 yards to Christian Kirk, 8 yards to Zay Jones after a false start, a 1-yard run, a Trevor Lawrence pass to Zay Jones, 29 yards, and then the Marvin Jones touchdown pass.
And these dudes
and
were
then
wide
the
open.
2-point conversion, and none of these plays were contested.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, I don't know if it was a prevent defense or whatever the scheme was, just seemed to be woeful and obviously inefficient.
Yeah, they were picking on Marcus Peters late in that game. Humphrey was in and out. I believe he was in for that last drive, but he had missed a drive earlier in the fourth quarter. It's so frustrating for the Ravens defense because I thought they played a pretty good game otherwise. Lawrence had been clean, but they forced a lot of stops in the first half. In the third quarter, Jaguars went 3 and out, and then the Ravens forced a fumble. So that they had been doing their job, and then you just get to winning time and you blow it. And it's
18 points allowed in the fourth quarter.
I mean, this is the first game all season that they haven't had a 10-point lead. They were one of the few teams in NFL history that was true, and it was 9, and it was mid-fourth quarter, and you can't put anything really on Lamar here because he had 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns. Like, he had to set them up multiple times here where the Jaguars came back, and he responded well. I feel like too much is on him still. Like, a lot of their offense early was him scrambling on 3rd and long and him just picking it up. He ends up with 89 yards. They didn't really have much of a running game. They had a number of drops, and you're counting on him to make like one of the best throws of his career to Deshaun Jackson for 62 yards on a play where Jaguars like dropped 8. Like, you're counting on those types of plays, and Josh Oliver, their blocking tight end, to score a touchdown. You just feel like he's still doing a little too much. Although I guess it's hard to blame the offense.
And there's really no excuse for. I'm sure you're going to see it if you haven't yet. He went off on a fan on Twitter who came after him as he doesn't deserve a contract. Look at this. Which he shouldn't have done. The language he used was, I'm sure, regretful when he wakes up in the morning or when he hears from whoever it is that's going to find him.
He defiled the Twitter opponent.
But like Lamar Jackson, beautiful throw to Deshaun Jackson after Gus Edwards fumbles the ball and causes the Ravens to lose the lead. They're 2nd and 20, and he hits D-Jax on the bomb, leads them to the touchdown, and then the defense blows the game. It's like, of course it wasn't on Lamar, but I've now seen enough from the Ravens, like from like the power rankings perspective, for example. I've been kind of in my mind making excuses for them all season and being like, you know what, they're fine. Look at this. They should have won this game. They didn't win this game, but look how good they were here. This has happened too many times.
I also think we're in an AFC where the better teams have an embarrassment of riches on offense in terms of their weapons. And you are kind of asking Lamar to do it by himself because I think when they lost Rashad Bateman, they're completely exposed at wide receiver. You lose Marc Andrews for a game or two. There's nothing around him.
Right.
What other quarterback is in this situation on a team that people are still saying they could go win a couple playoff games?
Right.
Let's see.
Demarcus Robinson dropped a touchdown. That was a 4-point play, like on a great play by Lamar. Like that could have been the difference in the game. Marc Andrews dropped a touchdown, although they ended up scoring on that drive. Anyways, like people were letting him down all over the place. Quickly, we got to mention that they went for 2. And there was a couple coaching decisions in this game that were fascinating, but we've sort of passed right by it that they go for 2, the Jaguars, to go win the game there. They could have kicked the ball to go for overtime, and I love that. I love them feeling that moment.
It happened twice today, and it worked twice today.
Yeah. Right, and the other one I didn't feel as good about in the moment, but the way the Jaguars' offense was moving the ball there, that felt like the best chance to win the game, and I love that Peterson did it and that Lawrence rewarded it. We got to see more of that.
Yes. And remember, Twitter is the playground of idiots. Noel Gallagher once said how any Ravens fan could watch that game and come after Lamar after seeing what the defense did laying down in that game. But Justin Tucker, it looked like he won the game.
Almost made that.
Well, that's
67. Calm down, Greg. 1 second. 67 yards, and it was straight down the middle. But then let's hear the call from the Jaguars.
From 67 yards, Tucker puts a foot to it. The 67-yard field goal is no good! No good! The Jaguars win it! What a win for Jacksonville!
And that's a silly building with the guy in the thong, the mascot, and the chlorine tank and everything. But that was a pretty good home field advantage today.
If you freeze frame that kick and it's just like you go 3/4 through it, I will bet my lease card that that thing's going in. And then bang, it's not. It looked perfect.
Well, if it's leased, though, what happens there?
Well, I don't know. I'd have to deal with the dealership. I don't know what I do.
Yeah, some insurance
I don't
issues.
I don't own property. So what am I supposed to
Long
do?
day of phone calls, at the very least.
I'm glad you mentioned the crowd because it almost felt like the crowd knew that they were watching something special.
Yes.
It was really great throughout the fourth quarter. They're a great football town. We know how supportive they've been. And I think Doug Peterson, we saw him celebrating right at the end. I think it was like
his hands on his knees.
It was a little
oh
extra because their squib kick to set up that kick would have gone down as one of the worst coaching decisions of the year. There was only 14 seconds left when they kicked it off. It was a bad idea, I guess, but it was even worse execution. They got the ball at the 40-yard line, and they had only burned 4 seconds off the clock. It was a disaster of a decision that almost handed over the game. I mean, Doug Peterson would have been absolutely killed. Just kick it, or kick it high and deep and short, but to the 5-yard line.
That's the great thing about winning, because no one's going to ever talk about that ever again after tonight. Check you later.
We're just getting started. Let's take a break, and then we'll roll on. Week 12. Welcome back. We keep spinning our way through Week 12. Let's head to the Meadowlands, where the Jets began the Mike White era.
Back to throw. Looks over the middle. Throws one and is caught by Garrett Wilson at the 35-yard line. Makes a man miss at the 30. Sprints right to the 20, to the 15.
That Garrett Wilson's player dog.
Touchdown. Garrett Wilson with a catch and run. A 55-yard touchdown.
It's on. Do it. Bob Wischusen and Marty Lyons with the call at WEPN. Mike White stepped in for the benched Zach Wilson and threw 3 touchdown passes and was almost perfect. 2 of those to Garrett Wilson, the other to Elijah Moore, just to rub it in Wilson's face even more. Zach Wilson, that is. And the Jets roll over a beat-up Bears team, 31-10 on Sunday. And, boys, there's 2 ways to look at this one. Both have merit. One, don't read into it too much. It's against the Bears, who are in tank mode at this point. They're beat up. They're one of the worst defenses in football. And I get that, because you will need to see more from Mike White than just this game. But then there's the other side. That White running this offense effectively and efficiently and getting the ball into the hands of the Jets' playmakers was a revelation and confirmation to all the players that really made this move happen.
I mean, I think it's a massive victory for the Jets where we stand right now. We'll see what happens with Mike White, but Mike White has produced before in spot starts. I think, secondly, this was all about the coaching staff listening to the players, listening to the locker room, and they tidied that mess up quick.
Maybe listen to the front office.
Sure, but I mean, in general, there's got to be enough people saying we need to make a change, and there wasn't a lot of. It wasn't, instead of being stubborn about it, they handled correctly. And then on the field, Mike White in rough weather is making throws, and Garrett Wilson, who went off a week ago, Elijah Moore, who's essentially been invisible. I mean, these guys are now part of the offense, and I don't care if it's a bad defense. You went out and put 31 points up. You were functional. So it's like that's what other teams have been doing to the Bears. That's what you just did to the Bears.
Right. Yeah, he had the highest quarterback rating, Mike White, for a Jet since Geno Smith back in 2014.
It all ties back.
Look, that Garrett Wilson play is the perfect play to point it out. Garrett Wilson is a beast. I think he could have been, or maybe he still could be, Offensive Rookie of the Year. He just looks so good when he gets the chance. And the way he opened up his hips and just okey-doked the defender there, it reminds you of Odell Beckham a little bit as a youngster in New York. But that play can give some credit to Mike White because it's absolutely a timing throw where he gets it over the first level of defense and in front of the second level. And if you don't have that ball there exactly on time, Wilson's not going to have the space to go make that play. And I don't think Zach Wilson is making that play. Not the same way. We know Zach Wilson isn't making that play in the same way. So that part of the conversation's over for me for a while. It's just what can this team do now? And with the schedule that they have, at least for Mike White, I think he's going to keep putting up good numbers.
Yeah, I can't wait to see him again because if you know his backstory, 2 years ago he became a brief sensation with the team by beating Cincinnati and throwing for 400 yards. Played Thursday Night Football, got injured immediately and missed that game. Then had a meltdown performance where he threw 4 picks against Buffalo and was out of the lineup until now. But if you've watched these Zach Wilson starts, the issues went beyond the opponent. So you can't just say, and if there are Zach Wilson defenders out there, say, well, if he got a chance against the Chicago defense, he would have done the same thing. No, because the things that White was doing, what made him look so different today, his ability to keep his eyes up, not be obsessed with the pass rush, get skittish, run around, hang in there, fine, and then just deliver strikes and be accurate with the football. And I think one thing that kind of has been under the radar because of the quarterback is how talented some of these playmakers are. And Garrett Wilson, and it's a sliding doors moment because the Jets were the other finalists for Tyreek Hill, and he kind of turns his back in the last second and goes to Miami, so the Jets pivot and draft Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson is a star here. Elijah Moore has that ability as well, and it's fun to see the offense just being run in an efficient, professional manner because it wasn't that anymore.
This is all we were asking, just
That's
like
it.
relatively competent quarterback playing up. More than that today. Not to dig it all up, but it's like I do wonder what this coaching staff, how they viewed Mike White versus Zach Wilson in camp, in practices, the person behind the scenes. And I just kind of wish, looking at the 2 Patriots games specifically, that you had a chance to have Mike White helm one of them. It would have been a big difference maker. But you're here now, and so you just have to wave all that goodbye. I'd be surprised if we see Zach Wilson, who was in street clothes today, inactive again this year. There'd be no reason.
Every time they showed him, I mean, it was, and again, like Marc mentioned it was raining and raining hard at times, very hard, and it didn't matter. This offense moved the ball really well. And every time they cut to Wilson and he's getting just poured on in the rain, wearing the Jets gear with a hood over him, like what was going through his head, you can't even imagine. But the Jets as an organization have moved on from all of that with this game, and that feels good as a fan, because for the first time since the Breece Hall injury, I'm like, okay, you could start opening your mind up to higher ambition for the season again, because the quarterback play was better for 1 week.
They're 7-4.
For 1 week.
They showed an ability to put 466 yards on the board against, I would say, the worst defense in the league. But that's part of the point, is like, okay, when you play the worst defense in the league, you can put 466 on the board. I didn't think that they were going to be capable of doing that before. Mike White doesn't have the physical tools that you would expect out of a great draft prospect, but he's not like a rookie. He was in the Mitch Trubisky draft class.
Right.
Like, he's been around. He's been in the league now since 2018. He was undrafted, I think, in 2017. He kicked around. Like, he has experience, and mentally, I think he knows where to go with the ball in this system, which really asks for right answers. And can he be better than a Nick Mullins was, for instance, for Mike McDaniel back in San Francisco? I think he can probably be better than that with this talent, and that's what he needs to do.
Next week, they are at Minnesota, and I think that is a really interesting game for both teams, but especially for Jet fans now, who are going to live and have the high life again off this quarterback performance. But until you see it again from White against a good opponent, you're going to wonder if it's fool's gold. That is
He's
a conversation.
He's a star in New York this week, though.
I mean, the Mike White chants were back. Very interesting. It's been an interesting season as a Jets fan.
Great game for you, too, because you know who led this game in tackles.
Oh, I know. Sanborn
with
Kinda
14.
Got everything I wanted. Anyway, let's move on. So that's my favorite team. Gregg's favorite team is the Seahawks, and they welcomed the Raiders team into their building, looking to wipe away their pre-bye loss in Munich. But guess what? The Raiders aren't laying down.
Hands off to Jacobs, stutters to the right, bursts through the whole 20, 25-30, he's off to the races, here in Seattle, nobody's going to catch him, 25-20, 10, ball game, bye-bye Josh, 86 yards in overtime, touchdown Raiders, victory Las Vegas.
Unbelievable. I mean, Gravedigger, how does Josh Jacobs on a 300-yard day, yards from scrimmage, not get the bongos?
Well, you said it right before the call. It's Gregg's favorite team. We don't want to, are we celebrating Gregg's sadness?
We're celebrating your sadness. You locked up the Seahawks. That's why he didn't.
Oh, because you locked up the Seahawks. Anyway.
A producer who uses his powers for evil will be noted.
Josh Jacobs ran 33 times for 229 yards, including, that 86-yard jaunt in overtime. And for the second time in as many Sundays, the Raiders walk off an opponent with a touchdown. I can't imagine that's happened too many times. 40-34 over the Seahawks. And, Greggy, we'll get to the Seahawks because it feels like their bugaboo, that defense, is once again going to be a major issue for them. But for the Raiders, you got to give it up to them because they had no reason to go up there and play this hard and play this well, and yet they perform well, and they're kind of just hanging around a little bit.
They're a tough offense to defend, and anytime Seattle got a stop in this game, it felt like they had scored some huge victory. Like, they were just going downhill. Jacobs ends up with over 300 yards from scrimmage total. That's outrageous. He's playing
didn't get the bongos.
Didn't get the bongos. Playing at an elite level. Devontae Adams only, quote-unquote, 7 for 74, but had an incredible one-handed catch to set up the game-tying touchdown. And then Max Crosby on defense with sacks in back-to-back crucial situations, one to end a drive in overtime, the other to end the drive at the end of regulation. He's playing at an all-pro level. Like, they have players.
Yep.
And Carr got intercepted a couple times. That was misleading. One of them, Adams, wasn't paying attention. It was on the first play of the entire game. It was a good ball. The second one was more of a great play by the Seattle defense where it hit the Raiders receiver in the hands. Carr was so comfortable. The Seahawks got no pressure on him, and he knows just when to get out of the pocket, when to let go of the ball. And their offense today, and we've seen this a handful of times this year, looked like one of the better offenses in the entire NFL.
Well, I think when they can run the ball this way, it helps Carr a lot. And there was that period where I thought that's what they were going to become, like a ground-dominant force that can overpower teams. And then that kind of was real hot and cold, came and went. But I love the Carr because those 2 picks came on the first 3 possessions. That's the formula for an entire team that's on the brink to begin with, where it seems to be there's a disconnect between quarterback and coach, offense and coach, team and coach and maybe owner who can't pay for another coach, or a lot of things going on. And yet they're 4-7, and I believe it's 6 of their losses have been by 1 score. So they've been in these games. They're not getting their doors blown off. And you went and beat a Seattle defense that, outside of today, had been trending upward over and over. I didn't love them against the Bucs, I guess, in Germany. But
still only gave up 21.
Right. Their defense had been an asset and not a weakness, and the Raiders just put it on them.
And I thought the defense and then Josh Jacobs, and the offensive line, of course, got their head coach off the hook because I was saying it in real time in the newsroom. Hated the overtime decision. First possession, the Raiders set up on 4th and 2, and a day when they have rolled up over 400 yards of total offense in an era when everybody's going for it. They settle. I know Daniel Carlson is an excellent kicker. They settle for a 56-yard attempt, and it's not even a game-winning attempt because it was their ball first. And Carlson pushes it wide right. Seattle gets the ball near midfield, only needing a field goal. And this Las Vegas defense stands strong, gets the 3 and out, punts it back, and Jacobs busts the first run for the game winner. So I didn't love the way McDaniels played it. I'm a little, obviously, as many Raiders fans I'm sure are, lukewarm at best on the McDaniels era so far. But just to circle back to your point, Gregg, Devontae Adams, Max Crosby, those guys are superstars on each side of the ball. Derek Carr is I think a good quarterback, not a great one. Josh Jacobs, I'm not going to say he's a superstar, but he's playing like one this year. He's actually 100 yards clear, the next closest running back in the rushing title race right now. This team has no business not being in the playoff mix, and maybe they still have a chance. They got to get hot here, but we'll see.
In the AFC, I would say they don't have a chance. They could run the table, and then they'd have a chance, and that seems a little much.
I don't know if you necessarily have to run the table, but you have to. You probably have one loss of wiggle room, maybe.
AFC, I think you're going to need 10 wins. It just looks
we always
deep.
Think that, though.
They're going to have to sweep Los Angeles in back-to-back weeks. You got the Chargers and Rams. I don't like this, and Dan, you mentioned maybe the Chiefs in the final game of the season are sitting people, but you got the 49ers and Chiefs to close the season and a tough Patriots defense. I don't see it, but I am impressed with today.
AFC, I mean, if they were in the NFC, I'd give them a chance. That 7th spot might get...
we could field a team that would make the NFC playoffs.
A little wonky. So I get a little wonky, but you're right. McDaniels was frustrating. Every 4th down call he made seemed to be wrong. He also kicked a field goal to tie it on 4th and 1 inside the 10-yard line in the 3rd quarter. And again, okay, you want to tie the game, but it's not just Jacobs who was running 6.9 yards per carry. Zamir White, 14 yards per carry on 2. Amir Abdullah, 3 for 16. Every time they ran the ball. So that drove me crazy. And then they did go for it at midfield on 4th and 1, and they had a toss play where they lost yards and didn't get it, and I think that was in his head. But they looked like they were the better team. They dominated up front on both sides. They got after Geno Smith a lot more than vice versa, and their offensive line played really well and really dominated Seattle's defense in a way that is a little concerning. This was a game where I think they felt the absence of Jamal Adams, just so many big plays and just the secondary, a lot of confusion going on for Seattle's defense. And Seattle's got a few little problems popping up. Kenneth Walker now is at 3 straight games where he really hasn't gotten anything going on the ground. He's been okay in fantasy because he scores a touchdown or he makes a big play as a receiver, but they were dominated when they tried to run the ball, and they just don't make as much sense. Geno mostly had a good day after a poor start, but the running game in a lot of situations just put him in a tough spot.
One thing about Geno Smith, he had a couple, again, every game, whether it's good or bad, he'll throw a couple throws. It's like, that's Geno Smith? Whoa. He has 7 touchdowns that have had a completion probability of under 25% this season. No other quarterback has more than 3. He's making those incredible
their
throws.
drives, when they went on a drive, it went fast. They had at least 5 plays over 20 yards. It might have been more than that, like a lot of big plays, but it wasn't consistent. And I think that's partly because of the running game. Geno made a couple bad decisions early, he got away with, and then he played really well. But they're just, if their defense, we'll see. I'm a little nervous.
But Dan, Mike White had 8 of those throws today, just to let you know.
Ooh, did he? Look at that.
I'm still tabulating, but I believe it's close to that.
That's good. God has walked into the Meadowlands.
Seattle also had some bad calls go against them.
All right,
they
Greg.
overturned.
Okay,
wait,
Greg,
I'm just
Greg,
saying.
Chapter 8.
Can we move on?
This
Greg?
is just one of the key
we leave
parts of this game.
We leave the door open just a little bit.
He just kicks it open. He just takes the door off the hinges and throws it off a mountainside.
I would say that
you had the ball near midfield in overtime, needing a field goal.
Absolutely.
So let's
you
calm
watch the
down
play.
a
Will you
little bit
ever
here.
stop talking, Greg?
The overturned fumble by Jacobs, where they called forward progress. You watched it. I think it was one of the most controversial call on Sunday. They did not allow what
unfair.
appeared to be a pretty clear fumble by Jacobs because they said forward progress.
Imagine being Greg's next door neighbor, like in the summer when the windows are all open in Greg's house.
Let's try something.
Can you imagine living with me?
Let's pause. Nobody say anything for 5 seconds. Greg, don't jump in, and then we're gonna go to break. You ready? Okay.
It's
good.
achievement for this podcast.
That is progress. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. And the Cleveland Browns welcome Tom Brady into their house. How would it turn out? Let's check it out.
McCoy to throw, back to pass. He's got time. He's up in the pocket. He's got an open field. He's to the 15. He's to the 10. He's to the 5. He dives. He is 10. Touchdown. 16-yard touchdown run by Colt McCoy.
That was just a little pre-Christmas present for Marc Sessler.
Right.
The fabled, if you listen to this podcast a lot, 2010 Patriots-Browns game that Marc talks about constantly. Colt McCoy going in the 34-14
The only
win.
time that Tom Brady had lost to the Cleveland Browns in his long and winding career.
I mean, was that the slowest 15-yard touchdown scramble you ever seen?
Greg, why would you need to say that now in a moment of celebration for Colt McCoy?
So that was Marc's favorite moment in this rivalry, but Tom Brady again having trouble with the Browns today.
Brissett underneath center. They give the ball to Chubb. He's driving for the goal line. He's in! He's in! Touchdown! Nick Chubb, and the Browns are winners!
They ran right behind James Hudson, right up the gut with the best running back in the league. What a comeback when your season was on the line.
I'm sorry, was Josh Jacobs in this game?
Oh,
no.
Jim Donovan in 2010, Jim Donovan in 2022, because Nick Chubb scored on a 3-yard run with 19 seconds left in overtime. And the Cleveland Browns in Jake Briskett's final start. Somebody tweeted at me I think yesterday, how could you work for the NFL and not even know Jacoby Brissett's real name? Twitter is the playground of idiots. Anyway, Jake Briskett's final start before Deshaun Watson's return, a 23-17 win over the Bucs. And afterwards, Brissett, and he really played admirably throughout this entire run. He got the game ball, and he had this to say after the game.
I mean, it's in no disrespect, but in the words of Tom Brady, that was f***ing awesome. That was f***ing awesome.
Hard not to root for that guy, Nick Shook, the Pipe, who joins us now, one of Ohio's brightest sons. And Shook, I know you. I know this has been a difficult time for Cleveland Browns fans, and it's about to get weird on some level, depending on your outlook when Watson comes back next week. But what a nice way for the Jake Brisket era to end, huh?
A nice way. I still can't get over the Colt McCoy flashback there. That was way out of left field. I was completely shocked. It's very pleasant. But, a great way for him to go out. And statistically, it's been a career year for him. And it obviously puts them on a lower ceiling offensively, but they've produced a good amount of points with him at quarterback. He's played very well. And you're right. What a way to go out to beat a quarterback who used to be, you used to serve as an understudy for in New England. Really a poetic ending and an unlikely outcome. I mean, so many things had to go right for the Browns for them to even be in this position. David Njoku, who has drawn the ire of Browns fans in the past for having inconsistent hands, makes the catch of his life one-handed on 4th and 10 with the game on the line, just to get them to overtime, and then they're able to hit a long completion. It was a strange game. The weather wasn't good. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't good. And they come away victorious. That's the Browns. I mean, I forked them last week, and that doesn't change anything, but it is a nice little pleasant game for Browns fans and for Cleveland to be happy about something, especially after what happened in college football yesterday. So it was weird, but it's a win for the Browns nonetheless.
Cleveland this season, along with their offense being productive, I know they seem sometimes like opening drive magic and then they'll go to sleep, but the issue has been defense, wire to wire. And I just wanted to see the Bucs coming out of Germany, where they were so balanced against the Seahawks. They ran the ball really well. They put up 17 points today. Was that more about Cleveland's defense finally looking competent and not totally lost on the ocean? Or is this just the Bucs offense going back to what we'd seen prior to the Seahawks tilt?
I think it's more of the latter. A lot of deep shots testing Martin Emerson, the rookie, in one-on-one situations with Mike Evans. Drew some PI calls, but actually Emerson didn't allow a single reception for Evans on the day. It was an offense that seemed almost a little too confident in the pass. It didn't rely on the run as much. You got to give some credit to the Browns, who have been terrible against the run this season. They really stuffed Rachaad White as the lead back in that offense. I mean, I anticipated him to break 100 yards and run all over the Browns, and they ended up winning by 1 score or whatever, and that's just not what happened. So they did play better, especially in the second half when they needed stops. And again, like you're right, Mark, that's been the story of the Browns offense this entire season. You have a great opening script, you get a touchdown, you take the kickoff because you receive to start the game because you have a good game plan, and then they just fall flat. They showed a graphic during this game, 44 minutes between possessions and 3 of their losses, or between touchdowns and 3 of their losses, and they were over 44 minutes today before they scored again. That's what made it so weird, is the fact that they were able to somehow wake up and go down the field, and it was a lengthy drive that they had to put together to then go score and send it to overtime. But yeah, credit to the defense. Joe Woods has been under fire all year, and at times they look bad again, but
I think it's more about the Bucs at this point. I mean, at least just based on his history, it's like we're talking about that Seattle game, and they didn't do that well putting up enough points, I think, against Seattle. But there was a stretch in the second half here after the Bucs went up 17-10. They got the ball 7 more times. That's almost an entire game's worth of drives. They didn't score a point, obviously, because it was 17-10. They had 6 first downs in those 7 drives. They had 91 yards. They had multiple chances to win the game. They couldn't do it. Like, that is a sickening loss if you're a Bucs fan, and if you're Tom Brady and trying to believe that this offense is turning some sort of corner. To go 7 scoreless drives. They didn't even turn the ball over. They were just bad to end this game.
Yeah, and they, at a certain point, you don't want to make it too simplified, but they just don't score enough points, this team. I mean, you look at their schedule this year, and let's go back since week 5, 21, 18, 3, 22, 16 in a win, 21 in a win, and now 17 in an overtime loss. And we're deep enough into the season where it's like, oh, look out here, because this might just be a limited offense. Tristan Wirfs suffered what looked like a terrible leg injury, so their left tackle, stalwart, very good chance that he's done until 2023. And Shook, I know with the Browns, they're the same as the Raiders. They're interesting when you compare them to the Raiders, another AFC team that's 4-7, that has used up all of their rope, as it were. Like, they have no margin for error here. But even if the playoffs are a pipe dream with Deshaun Watson, and they do get a layup next week against the Texans, they're going to be a berserker down the stretch because they play teams tough. They've hung in almost every game this season. I wouldn't want to face the Browns.
It gives the fan base consolation, because they have a reason to watch the Browns, even if they don't have a shot to make the playoffs, because you get kind of a trial with Watson going into the next season. And maybe you get a Mangini type run where you win your last 4 and carry some momentum into the offseason like he did with the Browns. Those Browns, by the way, those same Browns as Colt McCoy back in the day. And maybe that's how they go into the offseason with some positive momentum.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Why
the next year,
Greg?
Why is it?
I don't know. I'm just saying, when you say like Eric Mangini carried all that momentum, I think you gotta, it wasn't a great ending.
Oh no!
Like, the next thing I know, you're gonna say that the week after that Patriots game,
what?
The Jets walked them off in overtime.
That I forgot.
And sent the Browns down a death spiral.
That was a week after the Browns beat the world champion defending Saints, by the way. So
we do have maybe a title for this episode. It's like Rise of the 3-7 teams that are better than their record. Jaguars, Raiders, Browns, they all sort of deserved one.
A bit wordy.
It's like a little wordy, but they all deserve one, and they all got one.
4-7 heaven. Seal it,
Ooh,
sign it, deliver it. Shooky, you want to stay on for another game? We'd love to have you.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Keep moving.
Herbert from the shotgun. Win or lose. Eckler goes in motion. Herbert to pass. Caught. It's good. It's good. Herbert to Gerald Everett. And they take a 1-point lead.
A double slant. You had Keenan Allen going first. He drew all the attention. Right behind him, Gerald Everett with a layup touchdown. Or 2-point conversion.
15 seconds on the clock. Fortune favors the bold.
Oh, listen. All right.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
The Bolts Bongos.
The Bolts Bongos. Listen to the resin in Matt Money Smith's voice.
Wait, it's like a Tom Brokaw's unannounced child.
Unannounced.
Well, just like we don't know the history, but it feels apt.
2 teams went for 2 when they had a chance to kick an extra point and go to overtime today. Both those teams won their football games. Justin Herbert, who certain people will tell you is a social media quarterback, threw 3 touchdown passes without an INT, including that game winner to Gerald Everett on the 2-point conversion, and the Chargers escape with a win over the Cardinals. Woo, Shooky. How about that? The Chargers 6-5 and a huge win, and for the Cardinals, a stomach punch loss that they're probably not going to recover from.
You know, Cliff Kingsbury has talked about this on the Hard Knocks in season multiple times, how there's opportunities in front of them, and yet this was a huge wasted opportunity. They had 3 possessions in the fourth quarter alone where all they needed to do was pick up a few first downs and take some of that clock and take some of the time off the clock. You know, just bleed the clock, keep the ball out of the Chargers' hands. Each time they went 3 and out, they gained a combined 16 yards in those 3 possessions. Twice they got the defensive stops. It looked like the Chargers couldn't get anywhere near within scoring range. And then they gave them the 3rd opportunity. And it was that 3rd opportunity when they sit back to punt. This is it. This is when they're going to go out and score and win the game, because, you know, you only get so many opportunities in those situations. Justin Herbert goes down. It's kind of a short drive, but they convert, and then great play calling for the 2-point conversion. Nice little motion out of the backfield, distract the linebackers, get a trail over the middle. Gerald Everett wide open for the 2-point conversion. The Cardinals, they blew it. They blew their opportunity to win this game, and it doesn't fall on their defense. Their defense did the job twice. It falls on Cliff Kingsbury and their inability to scheme even 1 first down in the final quarter of this game. And that right there is the story of this Cardinals team the entire season. Opportunities wasted throughout the year.
It was a shocking ending, not just because of, you know, the 2-point conversion attempt and actually hitting it, which the Chargers have struggled in those situations in these short yardage where they go for it on 4th down. They just haven't been a good team there. It was shocking because until the fourth quarter, the Cardinals looked like the better team. They were getting everything that they wanted offensively. You mentioned they kept going 3 and out. Like before that, it felt like Kyler Murray was doing everything he wanted to do, and the Chargers defense had no answers whatsoever, and then it just totally flipped on a dime. Like the Chargers worked so much harder for their points in this game than the Cardinals did for their points, but the Cardinals kind of you're going to find a way to lose off between these 2 teams who both, it felt like loser energy, frankly, from both of these teams. Like the Cardinals had more loser energy.
Big loser energy. BLE. That's my only thing I have to say about that.
That's a great comment.
Anything else, Chuck? Any other takeaways here?
Well, the only time that there was any winning energy was on the 2-point conversion. That was it.
Even that one, that was great that they went for it, but it was shocking how easy it was. I don't know what Isaiah Simmons was doing on that play, if they knew that was the matchup they were going to get, Everett on Simmons. Simmons is just sitting 5 yards into the end zone and barely makes a movement. Have you ever seen an easier 2-point conversion? It was just pitch and catch. It was very strange.
He had outside leverage, right? He bites on the outside fake as if he's not already in position to play on that. It was bad defense from then, but yeah.
What is the argument for Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray as a duo to exist beyond the season?
Money.
I think it's probably about how much money the ownership group is willing to put into a new experiment.
Yeah, I think if it keeps going like this, that they're
this is a tough.
And also,
they're going to
stop
to
the
watch.
machine anyways.
I think maybe, I wonder if the Bidwills were looking at the news and they saw Matt Rule just got a $10 billion contract from Nebraska and all that offset money disappears, the Panthers don't have to worry about it anymore, assuming the language is similar in Kingsbury's, because he'll get a job in college whenever he wants.
University of Santa Barbara.
Cliff, I don't know. He's got that house.
The thing about college is he'll get a big-time job.
I know.
Yeah,
I don't deny that. Like, that's not, I named a different college.
Although as Spice Rack likes to point out, he failed in college.
Powerhouse.
I know.
Like, his record in the NFL is literally better than it was in college.
Well, he had terrible defenses would be he came in with some pedigree of, we don't know what sort of offense he's going to run.
What happened to OSU, since you mentioned it? Michigan pants them, as I understand.
Ohio State fans will hate me for this, but I tweeted about it and I've been getting lit up about it since then. I think that they need to start considering a new coach, because in the 1990s, there was a coach named John Cooper who could recruit great and he could never beat Michigan. If you can't beat Michigan, you're never going to contend for a national title. And that's starting to look like Ryan Day.
Go get Urban Meyer.
It's just 2 years. It's just 2 years.
I mean, they had him.
I know. Let's bring him back.
Okay.
But the fashion, Greg, the fashion in which they lost is bad.
Greg, do you have a college take here? You pushing back on this?
I'm just saying it seems emotional. They didn't lose the game.
Greg just has 14 TVs in front of him on Saturday watching all the college football.
It is literally what the whole season boils down to for Ohio State.
They're 12-1, and they lost one game. It's only 2 games here.
Greg, you may not have your hand on the pulse of Ohio on that one.
I'm just saying, if you're agreeing with Albert Breer's Ohio State takes, you probably got the wrong takes.
Whoa. I'm not agreeing. Wow. I'm putting my own out there.
Speaking of takes, I had a hard take against the club in England, the Three Lions Club.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, just watch out, Team USA. You're never going to beat us. You never have and you never will. Very quiet. Didn't hear a lot from the English listeners.
No.
They
were lucky to get a tie. It felt like a moral victory for England to get a tie in that game.
Anyway,
you know what else was a moral victory, by the way?
What?
When I locked up the Chargers. What a genius pick here.
Boy. You know what? I have to say this.
And you said, this is your quote to me after the game. Quote, your joy in this moment weakens me. That's how much Stan wants me to fail.
Because not only, you know what it is? He wasn't even gloating.
I didn't say a word.
He wasn't gloating. You and I, Mark, we lose on a 2-point conversion.
Right.
This son of a wins on a 2-point conversion.
Yeah, it was gloating energy. I'm not saying you verbalized it, but yeah.
He was just so happy.
Exactly.
I just wanted to take the monitor and just crush it and just take the happiness out of him.
See your little laptop?
What does that say about you and our relationship in this program?
It says I'm a monster. Always feels good to hurt your
friend.
And
then you said... Yeah, someone had a great take on that, that you want to be the hero in someone's life, but you want to put them on the ground before you can become the hero. I was
like, manufactured hero move there.
That's dark.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what Jason. I think we traffic in bits about darkness all the time, but I'm not sure if he understood, Jay, that people might not understand the context there, unless that's something I actually do.
Well, you need to.
But I don't even know what that means, really.
I think you could take I don't suggest that you do that, but maybe just in your own personal time, kind of in the middle of the night, just explore the comment versus shooting it down on the show right now. Just sort of explore it.
All right.
Because I'm not saying, by the way, that I agree with Jason somewhat. I think that's I don't know what he's doing.
Right, explore why you want to crush me with a computer and what that comes from. Because afterwards, when the Seahawks won, the Seahawks lost, you were like, well, at least we've got that. That'll humble you a little bit and make you not feel as good.
Yes.
But you're wrong, actually, because I had locked up the Seahawks originally, and I switched off the lock. That's the switch of the year.
If you want to know why I felt that way, just ask the other person sitting next to you who felt the same way, and then wonder why all those people around you just want to crush your head with a monitor.
No, it's mostly just you two. This is where we need
according
Wes.
To you.
We need Wes to balance it out.
According to you.
I have a parting word.
Yes.
I'm glad that this is one of those rare moments where I'm glad that my monitors are 2,500 miles away from me.
There he goes. Nick Shook, thank you very much. The pipe.
And while we're talking about locks, I should have mentioned...
Yes.
The Cincinnati Zoo locked up the Jets via Twitter late in the week, but got it in time.
Pre or post the line moving past lock zone?
That is a great question.
I think it was before because we thought
Fields was questionable.
Fields was questionable. I believe it was a 6-point line at that point.
I think it speaks volumes.
Mark said it all. Is this the new one?
It is.
There's a lot of honking from the zoo about like bold picks and things. And you're blocking against Trevor Siemian on the road.
I like this. This is an upgrade. All right, let's move on now to the game that was supposed to be the matchup of the year on paper. The games are played on paper.
In motion, Jody Fortson right to left. Fake handoff to Pacheco. Backing up further is Mahomes. Guns it over the middle. Caught. 20-yard line. Into the 15-yard line. Angling near side with a block. 10-5. Kelsey stretches out for the end zone. Touchdown! Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes to Travis Kelsey. The best tight end in National Football League history.
Oh, Greggy. Mitch Holthus getting in the debate that we began last Sunday night when talking about who is the best tight end ever. Travis Kelsey certainly in the discussion as he continues to put up numbers that we've rarely seen at the position. He had a touchdown, the only touchdown throw from Patrick Mahomes, but nobody had to do much against this Rams team right now. A 26-10 win for the Chiefs at Arrowhead. Bryce Perkins played quarterback in this one, Marc Sessler.
When they scheduled this, they thought we were going to get some version of the Rams that simply does not exist on one side of the ball right now. Bryce Perkins taking snaps, running all over the place. His scrambling ability is his offering, what he offers as an asset. Very little else. But you're throwing to Tutu Atwell. Karen Williams is running the ball. It's just like this is a completely different cast of characters. And I kind of give the Rams defense some credit. Jalen Ramsey was absolutely fried on that one Travis Kelsey touchdown. And it's like the 18th week in a row, I feel like Jalen Ramsey's doing something where it's like, I'm sorry, what's your Jalen Ramsey, or are you a post version of Jalen Ramsey? But they stopped the Chiefs. They held them to field goals on drives that ended at the Rams 3, 4, 9, and 13. So the red zone defense showed up. Aaron Donald caused a lot of problems. But it's kind of like the Chiefs were able to just go through the motions. Andy Reid seemed a little irritated coming out of halftime. He thought that there were issues with the red zone. He called it terrible. And yet that didn't unlock them for 30-something second-half points. This was just sort of on the journey of this season. Patrick Mahomes still did beautiful things. He had an end zone interception and was kept at bay a little bit by the Rams, but they still got it done. And in the end, like, the Rams are a non-functional offense that also came into the game with no Allen Robinson. So just it's a bare cupboard.
Allen Robinson, who needs surgery on a stress reaction in his foot. So his deeply disappointing first season with the Rams is over. We'll see what his future is in Los Angeles. And this is the first 5-game losing streak ever for the Rams under Sean McVay. Sean McVay, in what was a unfortunate snapshot of their season as a whole, gets absolutely clocked on the sideline by one of his own players running onto the field, had a swollen jaw for the rest of the game after that. And, yeah, the Chiefs, This is one of those games where they didn't have to do much. It was the old Milton Berle routine, just show enough to win, and that's what they did, and they're 9-2, and the Rams cannot get to January fast enough.
I think Sean McVay is going to, I wouldn't say black eye, but there's going to be some issues there tomorrow when he wakes up in the skin and the adrenaline.
Especially when he watches the tape and sees who did it to him, and that guy's no longer on the team.
It's the beginning of the problems.
There was a report that's from ESPN that Stafford is questionable to return the rest of this season, which is more just confirming what makes sense. And we'll talk Rams in the offseason, but I think the number one thing is Stafford going to play next year? Is Aaron Donald going to play next year? Is Sean McVay going to be back? And it's crazy that they have all these games to run out the string here, and now it's without Robinson. That injury happened on Friday. It's just depressing. I would have liked to seen a little more out of Pacheco in the running game. It's like this is almost a game you can work on some things. And I think they're going to need their running game, and I like the way Pacheco runs, but they weren't particularly efficient running the ball today, and I think
the Rams defense did show up. I think it wasn't. You can't just do what you want against Aaron Donald.
And also, you know how it is. And sometimes in these type of games where it's such a mismatch and one of the teams is so down low, usually because it's one of those Murphy Law seasons, maybe the team that wins doesn't get all the way up. It doesn't have that same energy to it, and you just kind of just take care of business.
And they had a lead early. I don't like the whole greatest tight end of all time thing, just like putting it on him, recency bias, when for most of his career, everyone would recognize he wasn't the best tight end in the league. I would say he's not the best tight end in Chiefs history. That'd be Tony Gonzalez. A lot more first-team All-Pros. You have other guys in that division, Kellen Winslow, Shannon Sharp, Antonio Gates. Like, is he getting to be in that mix? Kelce, I would say, would be in that mix, but to just like put him all over all these guys because he's had a couple of good weeks seems not good weeks. He's had a
tremendous career.
He's had Ozzie Newsome, I'd throw in that.
Right, he's had a tremendous career, but I think this year
Kyle Brady
is starting to put him up with those guys. But there's no reason why he's suddenly like zoomed past all those guys. That's all.
And I'll use one of your own Patriots in this argument. I think one thing helping Kelce is as he's getting deeper into his 30s, he's remaining elite. Just like Brady put everyone in the dust because he stayed great for an extra 5, 7, 8, 9 years now. Maybe this is Kelce what's going to separate him as he's a high-end guy
That's fair.
into
if
his 30s.
If he stacks 2 or 3 more years like this, then it's kind of crazy.
All right, now let's move to a matchup between 2 NFC teams with playoff aspirations. Atlanta, Washington, the loser in bad shape, the winner feeling good. Let's see what happens. I guess that's every game.
Sure, that's sort of how it works.
Within the when you look at it through the prism of the NFC playoff race, especially so.
I think you explained it well.
All right.
Back to pass is Mariota. Ball's tipped. It's in the air. And is it picked off in the end zone? The Commander said they picked it off. Did Kendall Fuller get it? Waiting for the signal. Reception, Kendall Fuller.
Kendall Fuller is hanging out for dear life. He realizes how huge this is. The entire stadium is on their feet, realizing Washington just might have saved the game.
Saved the game. Maybe saved the season. Bram Weinstein with the call. Who was that also? Because it wasn't London Fletcher.
Julie Donaldson?
Julie Donaldson as well, of course. WBIG. And it was Deron Payne getting his big paw up, getting the big meat hook up, putting the ball in the air, and then Kendall Fuller coming down with it, intercepting Marcus Mariota in the end zone with 58 seconds to play. And, man, it doesn't get bigger than that because it goes from the opportunity with Cordell Patterson, by the way, in your backfield, who just runs people over in the goal line. Jesus Christ. You instead drop back to pass, and instead of a 20-19 win, which seemed very possible in that moment, you lose 19-13, and that is 6 wins in 7 games for the Commanders. You just got to give it up to this team. And Fuller sealed the game this week with a pick. He had a pick 6 last week at Houston, and this is just a team that is finding its way here as the season goes on. And it's defense that's getting the job done. They still don't have Chase Young. They kept him down for another week, but we might see him next week. But you have a running game also now that is coming and really coming along. Brian Robinson, I thought, looked excellent. This was the Brian Robinson that we heard about and saw in the preseason, 18 for 105 in this game, running hard, running fast. Washington, take them seriously. They're 7-5 now. They are in the mix for real.
Robinson, can catch the ball too. I thought this was, you're right. I was kind of watching this out the corner of my eye, a standout game. And their defense has been doing this week after week, and it's that line. So it's kind of like what Ron Rivera sold you. And I feel like every Ron Rivera season has like the get out of the gates slowly. We have issues, right. And then we rip off 4, 5, 6 straight wins. I mean, this Washington team has not won 6 of 7 dating back to 2012. It's been dark times. I think you're going to rise and fall with Taylor Heineke, but I'm just sort of a Taylor Heineke fan. I'm not claiming that he's perfect, but he kind of fits on this team. And this is the one game where I thought he and Terry McLaurin didn't quite make a ton of production together because of A.J. Terrell on the Falcons was on McLaurin for most of the game and played one of his best outings all season.
Right, let's be real. There's not much separating all these teams in the NFC. Washington keeps winning games like this. But now there is separation here between these two teams specifically. The fact that the Washington gets to 7-5, it's going to be between them, Seattle, the Giants, and maybe the 49ers are in that mix too for the last spot. And then there's a pretty big drop-off in the NFC to the teams that are 2 games under 500. So all those teams are going to get into the playoffs except for one, and Washington's put themselves in that position.
And Washington has the Giants, then their bye, then the Giants.
That's very interesting because I do think these teams are very, very close in terms of ability. And Washington obviously is just playing better right now. So if I'm a Giant fan, I'm very nervous that my season is taking a hard left turn. And Atlanta, both these teams ran the ball really well. Another game in Northeast, not very good weather today. So it was wet.
Tyler Algier.
We're getting close. We're getting close.
I mean, by calendars.
It's the nomination.
It's the holiday season, too, slows down
I didn't want to bring
processing sometimes.
Greg, you do not understand how the U.S. mails operate, so I don't want to.
Oh, they're definitely off for Thanksgiving.
Having an expertise in that also.
The government with the cutbacks. Ironic, you take shots at the Pentagon.
You're saying this is done through
They tried to get rid of the post office a few years ago. What
Uncle Sam's trying to help you, despite some of the negative things you've said about the Pentagon. We'll see what happens if we can get this
totally
before New
sound
Year's.
analysis on the Pentagon, by the way.
Washington ran 37 times for 176 in this game. Atlanta 29 for 167. But Atlanta, they're playing without Kyle Pitts, and Mariota again makes the killer mistake.
It was like a
at the end.
Little tip pass. I mean, it is crazy how these plays come down to a play.
Do we need to defend Marcus?
No, we don't. But that was a tip.
That
was a tip pass. But these games come down to like one play or two plays, and it wasn't really just that tip pass. The play before it, they got a free rusher, James Smith-Williams, in on Mariota, and Montez Sweat ended up cleaning it up. You had 1st and goal at the 2 with 1:10 left there. You have Washington over a barrel. You're totally expecting the Falcons to be able to run that in, and you end up losing 2 yards on the first play. And Mariota ends up eating it for a couple yard loss, and then they feel like the need to throw the ball and surprise them. That's a little surprising.
Yeah, and in other Washington Commanders news, they unveiled a Sean Taylor memorial. Taylor, of course, the great safety who was shot to death in 2007 at the height of his career. And it's just crazy with this organization that they just can't seem to get anything right. They had Sean Taylor's family there, and they have a big curtain over what is the centerpiece of the memorial. They pull the curtain off, the covering off, and it's a mannequin in a Sean Taylor uniform, a wire mannequin behind glass, and it's not even an official uniform. It's mismatched. It's a Nike top, but Reebok pants, and then Soccer World Cup cleats. And in general, it just... if you watch the video of it, you could see Taylor's family, and even they seem to have a look like.
Well, I think the video said it all, because the entire there's a large crowd there, and it left a lot of mystified gazes at the.
And even right down to the fact that obviously we know what happened with the team name change, so they just have an old Redskins uniform there with the helmet and the logo and everything. It's like we couldn't build that man a bronze statue and put it out in front. This is what you come up with. It's just they never seem to get it right, this organization. Yeah. Maybe that changes in the future when some ownership changes happen, but right now, be better. Not good enough. But they were good enough on the field today. And Ron Rivera, a guy that we were burying, a guy we were saying, it's time for them to find new leadership, he's doing a good job there too.
He does this every time.
All right. Let us move on to Charlotte, where the Carolina Panthers had yet another starting quarterback, and Russell Wilson. Oh, Russell Wilson.
Shotgun snap. Darnold, quarterback keeper. Darnold lost the football. Has to dive on it. And I'm not sure anybody touched Sam Darnold.
Right. That might be a touchdown.
It is a touchdown for Sam Darnold.
Run the option, fumble, and then army roll into the end zone.
Perfect play for this game.
So heady. That is Sam Darnold football right there. You don't count out. Sam Darnold. Jordan Gross and Luke Kuechly on the call. How about that? WBT. Sam Darnold threw a touchdown pass, ran for one, but actually recovered a fumble for a second score. And the Panthers used their defense from there to get by the Denver Broncos 23-10. This game, we don't need to spend a ton of time on this one, Greg, but
I've got 17 minutes planned. Here we go.
What do you got? What was your takeaway on Darnold's debut?
He played well. He especially got confident in the second half. He didn't do much in the first half. He had a nice throw down the field to DJ Moore. When Darnold plays, or Walker, they actually used DJ Moore, who beat Surtain a number of times in this game, which you're just not used to seeing. So that was nice. And he didn't make any mistakes. They just punted a lot, and then eventually he started playing with confidence in the second half, and he was fine. But it was more about the defense. It was more about Russell Wilson. We keep thinking we get to new lows for the Broncos, and then we get lower. So I will just quickly run through like the options for new lows in this game. One option, they had negative 1 yard passing with 4 minutes left in the first half.
Oofa.
Another option, they ran the ball on 3rd and 20 because they didn't trust Russ. Then got the ball back on a fumbled punt, and then did not let Russell Wilson throw the ball even once on the ensuing drive, even though they kind of had a 3rd and medium and they just kicked a field goal. Their only points in this game came on a touchdown that happened after a roughing the passer that would have ended the drive, and a field goal on a short field where they essentially got 10 yards and kicked it. Let's see. We had Mike Purcell, the defensive lineman, yelling at him at one point in the game. And I think that's
we have Russ's reaction to that. Purcell came off the field after a field goal drive by Carolina, and you could say he was imploring Russell Wilson to do something, but I'm sure the language is more colorful. Wilson was asked about it after the game.
Mike and I are on the same page. You know, he came off after they kicked the field goal, and he was pissed off. He just said we got to F and go, you know. And I agree, you know. So me and him on the same page. There's no animosity there at all. We're on the same page. We got to win. You know, we got to come out here and have some grit to us, some mentality to us. We got to be able to win these football games.
Mark, you're shaking your head.
Well, I am waiting for the moment. Tell me if I missed it. Where Russell Wilson, at least it's sort of like in a human being fashion.
You'll be waiting a while.
Acknowledges that this has been a disaster and that there's a lot to do, because outside of what we sort of say about the Cardinals week to week with looming issues personnel-wise and what you're going to do going into next season, like this is the darkest, unfixable quarterback situation in the league, because you're stuck with this. And I see there's literally zero signpost that tells me, actually, this is a bump in the road. It's a gigantic bump in the road, like an earthquake hit. So it's an opposite of a bump. It's a chasm. But how do you get out of it?
Chasm?
I say chasm.
But wait a second.
I don't know anymore.
Wait a second. You're right. It would perhaps be helpful for Russell Wilson to acknowledge what everyone else sees. We are terrible, but we're going to fix this thing. But I don't think that's how his brain works.
No,
I don't
he's relentless positivity
I don't
guy.
think that's allowed. So I think that might be part of the frustration that his teammates have for him. And also to what you're saying about the quarterback situation, it's a bit of an unsolvable riddle for this organization. And what's going to happen, unfortunately, I don't think – I mean, every once in a while there is a guy that's one and done, and it's pretty clear by Black Monday. Nathaniel Hackett, I don't think there's any way he saves his job. I think he's going to be cooked, in part because they know they have to make a big change, and it can't be the quarterback, so it's going to be the coach's head who rolls. And I feel for him. I know he has a responsibility in this because he recruited Russell Wilson to come here, and he's an offensive mind who has not been offensive minded. In fact, he had to give up the play calling duties. That hasn't worked out for the team either. But Gregg, there's like so many things negative around this team, but Wilson refuses to be negative, and I think it's the coach who pays ultimately.
I agree. They have 6 games left. I'm always wary of declaring too much about coaching because I've seen guys like Doug Marrone win the last 2. Actually, he didn't even win the last 2 games of the year. They just played the Peyton Manning Colts close once. And
could change minds.
Like
things
can change, but they've just shown no signs of life. Like another option that it could have had for the lowest moment here was after they got that 1 touchdown, which only came because the drive extended with penalty. They get an onside kick, and the game's probably over at that point anyways. It's 23-10, and then Russell Wilson just throws 4 straight incompletions. It was as ugly as it gets. Steve Wilks, though, 3-3 as interim head coach. I heard even before this game some whispers that he has a real chance to keep this job if they play hard the rest of the way, and they are certainly playing hard. They could be 4-2 if not that for that crazy game against Atlanta. They held the ball for 37 minutes. They were dominant in this game for what it's worth.
When Wilks was in Cleveland as a defensive coordinator, like over and over you heard players love him. They love him in Carolina. And most of his stops, it's like, this dude is a good leader. And it's like he definitely deserves to get real interviews this time around because the Panthers were a disaster before this. It's easy to forget what was going on there. And he's milked some interesting performances on both sides of the ball.
All right, let's take a break and we will roll on. Welcome back. We have a shutout alert. Let's head to Santa Clara.
He looks middle. He will throw. Kamara makes the catch. Kamara takes it down to the goal line. He fumbled the ball, and it's deflected around, rolling free on the goal line. Who's got it?
Charles Omenahue's got it. That's who got it.
49ers let them get to the 1-yard line and then take the ball away to keep the shutout intact.
Man, when Alvin Kamara is failing near the goal line, you know it's not your season. And that is 4 straight second-half shutouts for the Niners defense. And that was my guy, Talanoa Hufanga, who forced that Kamara fumble that held back New Orleans, who was turned away repeatedly in the second half in every attempt to get back into the game. Final score, though, 13-0. The Niners roll on 4 straight wins. And Gregg, this is a game where the Niners, we all were writing sea poems, to use a Sesslerism, about their offense in the last couple of weeks, and that wasn't quite locked in today. But what it did do was allow us to focus on the defense, which is also very good and deep and talented, and that's why this team is a legitimate Super Bowl contender.
Right, because they're one of the few teams, and I throw Dallas in this mix, that in any given week, and you're going to need this over a 17-game regular season schedule, you need it in the playoffs too. Either side of the ball could dominate enough to win. I'm a little stunned that the Saints defense, and I know they did get a lot of players back, 7 players, most of which were starters who missed last week's game for injury, were back for this game. But I'm still kind of amazed the Saints defense held up. But you know what? This 49ers defense has the capability to dominate up front, especially. Like, you can tell me, but like line play wise, I guess they handed the Saints their lunch.
Yep. The Saints were held to just 63 yards on the ground. And, Andy Dalton has had some good moments this season, probably more bad than good. But if you're asking him to throw you to victory, it's not going to happen. And San Francisco, their D is just, again, it's under the radar because everyone's always talking about Kyle Shanahan and Jimmy G and all the weapons, but they haven't allowed a point in more than 94 minutes of game action now.
What?
And I mentioned that stat about 4 straight second halves without allowing a point. They are the 5th team since 1991 to do that. So that's going back 30 years. So, yeah, this is a team that's humming, and they could do it and beat you in a lot of ways.
Yeah, there just aren't that many teams this season where, to your point, Gregg, like if the offense takes a little bit of a week off, well, the defense just completely drops a hammer and dominates. I don't love that Elijah Mitchell got hurt in this. I'll wait and see what happens with that. I look at the Niners and feel like there might have been, they seemed a little off on offense today. And you are a team that you were on the West Coast against the Chargers, night game. You had to stay on the west part of the country, go to Mexico City, come back and do this. Like, that can throw you off a little bit. I mean, you're allowed to have a day like this, but they survived.
I'm glad you brought up the Mitchell injury because he is a really, really good player. And who knows? It was a foot injury, and
McCaffrey went in and out too.
Yeah, he was quickly ruled out. And so this window where all of the top skill players were healthy and making plays, hopefully that didn't end today and it was just a brief 2-week opening. But at the same time, that might be the only thing that could save these other teams in the NFC, because if they do have it humming and they're healthy on both sides of the ball, look out. And the Saints, they will march on into the offseason, Greggy.
Yeah, 4-8. I mean, when Andy Dalton is your leading rusher, you're probably not going anywhere. It's all about Olave's Rookie of the Year. I think Caden Ellis has kind of came out of nowhere and been one of the best defensive players in the league, I would say, over the last month, just kind of dominating week after week, but that's all they're looking for. They are in the NFC South. I mean, they're only 1 win behind the Bucs. Now, you'd normally think of like the loss column is more important, but in the NFC South, it is so hard to get wins that it's crazy that Carolina's only 1 win behind Tampa. It's just a fact.
Well, no, the
and
facts
New
are
Orleans
facts,
is only 1 win behind Tampa.
But are you,
get the people excited.
I was going to say, but are you actually making a case that anybody else can win this division? And the Bucs, what we saw from the Bucs today
I actually
is,
think there's like a 15% chance that either the Panthers or the Falcons could win this division. Just something crazy happens in one of those two, ends
15.
up popping. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
20.
It's not very good.
That's a chance.
See, if I was such a bad guy, Gregg, I would have moved on to the next game when...
Oh, yeah, you set me up a few times.
Instead...
You set me up a few times.
Go ahead.
The Rainmaker came! climate change is happening. The rain isn't out quite as much as it used to be, but we're 4-1 on the season. They covered the 8.5 points. That doesn't have to be pretty.
9.5, but they still covered it.
Okay, either way. Moved around during the season.
It was a fairly fortunate victory for the Rainmaker if you watch the game, but at the same time, it doesn't matter. You're still collecting.
It doesn't matter. So everyone
doesn't matter how you get there.
I mean, 4-1. That's an 800 winning percentage. That would be leading the NFC South.
Your loss did sink a slew of families across the country that took your advice that week.
But
you can live with that, Greg.
I know you can. For my one loss out of 4 out of 5.
I'm just thinking on a more micro level what it did to those families.
Right. Some people who traffic in that world only have the means for one wager.
Right.
And if that was the one they made, nothing will ever be the same.
All I really
the
saw
Rainmaker.
Did you ever see Boiler Room?
Yeah, we're living at the YMCA now.
I mean, we're not doing a weekly Rainmaker, but
that was also the week you went 1-1, so you still got one right that week.
Look at that! Look at that! Thanks, Justin.
But again,
you don't need Wes here. You have Justin.
He's just spitting facts, and the facts are the Saints team in one way or another feels like a dead team walking.
All right. One more game to get to, and it features a team that is very much moribund.
Back to throw, gets it off. He's got Akins.
That's going to be a touchdown.
The football picked up by the Dolphins. And Xavier Howard walks into the end zone. Touchdown, Miami.
I'll tell you what, X-Man just going to jog into the end zone for that touchdown.
What are the parabolic mics picking up there?
I don't know.
Was it so easy to beat the Texans right now that the band in Miami just went full on into the music before he even reached the 10-yard line on that return?
I'll update you. It is that easy.
It is that easy. Don't get hung up by the final score, which was 30-15. Dolphins over Texans, because this was a game that was 30-zip at the half. Dolphins take their foot off the accelerator and just coast home for another win. Their schedule tightens up significantly, but you take care of business, Mark, and that's exactly what the Dolphins did here.
Yeah, I mean, good teams go out and just hammer failed operations. And the Texans are repeatedly on the bottom end of these because we talked about last week how they were outgained 246 yards to 5 in the first half. Today, 287 to 32. That is a combined 533 yards to 37. This is an offense that generated 37 points over 4 first-half quarters in 2 weeks. And so really just set up. Plus, you throw an interception that set up an easy Dolphins score. There was a fumble returned by Xavier Howard. So the Dolphins basically were just handed about the easiest Sunday around. But you still saw that this offense is so dangerous right now. I mean, I think that I am done sleeping on this team if I have it all. I think they could probably knock anyone out in any playoff game if you get the good version of Tua. One little note. Teron Armstead went out with a pectoral injury, and after that happened, Tua at one point, because the game was so out of control, it was like, should we just take Tua out minutes into the third quarter here? He was sacked 3 plays in a row. At one point, he looked like he was sort of limping around a little, so he got yanked early. But Ian Rappaport, along with Tom Pelissero, the Pellraiser, noted that the pec strain apparently is not as bad as originally feared. He could miss some time, but hope is that he will, in quotes, be back on the field at some point relatively soon. That is huge for them.
That's huge.
That is absolutely like a Damashek Jenga piece for their offense.
Sometimes when you hear that pec thing, you immediately, it's torn, and then it's see you next year. Yeah, and like I said, next week they get the 49ers on the road. Then they're against the Chargers, then the Bills, and then the Patriots and the Jets. Like we're gonna learn a lot more about the Dolphins. But the Texans have hit that stage of moribund territory. It happens to a couple teams every year where they just cease to even exist as an outfit that can compete. Like Dameon Pierce is a perfect example. Dameon Pierce is a running back who was having a great rookie year, but at a certain point you just get overwhelmed by how terrible things are around you, and he no longer has a presence.
There's nothing
here.
Yeah, to your point, he had 8 yards on 5 carries. Kyle Allen did start over Davis Mills. It made
why
the environment makes none of that have any difference.
Just start Davis Mills and see if he could be your backup next year.
Well, I think he's probably solidified as their backup based on where they're at.
I mean, who knows if anyone in Houston
he's a backup.
is going to be there next year. I think that's all TBD. The coaching staff could be different. The front office.
That'd be two one and dones in a row, which is what we were suspicious of that when they
front office
did this
could be different. I mean, I'm impressed by Miami's consistency. They want their run game to be better than it was today. They also lost Austin Jackson late in this game, their other starting tackle, and the drop off from Armstead and Jackson, who also missed some time earlier, to their backup tackles was immense. So that's huge with a huge Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan rivalry game next week.
Spicy. All right, there you go. That is the Week 12 slate, with the exception of Sunday Night Football, Packers, Eagles, which you could check our analysis of if you check out the podcast Around the NFL, which you can get 5 times a week. Are we doing it 5 a week? That's pretty good. So subscribe if you haven't. Thank you. Until next week, remember, heed the call.